Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. This is Rosh, and this is a video series I'm putting together called AxeFX 3 Basics. A little about me. I'm an LA-based guitar player and guitar tech. Some of my clients include Steve Vai, Dweezil Zappa, Leppard, Etheridge, Bush, Perfect Circle, and more. So I wanted to give back to the Fractal community and show some approaches on how to build presets. So in this video, or actually, I'm sorry, in the previous video, I covered the multiband compressor block and using that for high gain sounds. I briefly touched on how to use the multiband compressor for a clean sound. So I wanted to get a little more in depth for that. So this is going to be kind of the clean sound, and I'm going to use air quotes for like an 80s clean sound. And this is pretty common practice during the 80s when it was like the rack studio, LA studio guitar sound. So if you're familiar with guitar players like Steve Lukather, Mike Landau, they would use a compressor in lieu of an actual amplifier, and then they would run the compressor into stereo power amps and then use all the rack-mounted effects to get kind of that 80s kind of clean sound. And so this is a pretty cool approach. So again, this is not going to be using any amps. You're going to be just using a compressor. So this, the multiband compressor, makes a really good like tonal clean palette to make this kind of sound. There's also, you can use the JC120 with some tweaks, but we'll cover the multiband compressor in this video. So let's do a quick build, and what you're going to want is an in and an out, and then you want a multiband compressor. And for those who didn't watch the previous video, basically what a multiband compressor is, it's like having 3 compressors in one. So the compressor, the regular standard studio compressor, and if you check out 12.09 beta, the one that was just released today, which is Friday, May 22nd, there's more variants of the regular compressor block. So those are also something that you can check out. But for this video, we'll use the multiband compressor. And keep in mind that if you do use something 12.09 beta and others, the frequency range parameter right here is going to be gone. So I will not cover that in this video. Okay, so here we go. We have a multiband compressor, no amp, and here's the sound. Right? So right away, it's very dry, but very clean. And I mean, even just at the stock settings, you get that kind of like 80s clean sound. And the cool thing is, if you dig in, you're not going to clip too much. So we'll probably bring the level down just a hair on that. And so for this kind of sound, what you can do is the threshold is how quickly, or the volume at which the compressor starts to kick in. And you can use these level parameters to boost or cut the low end, whatever frequency range each band in the compressor is covering. So for example, right now, the mid section by default is covering the 120 hertz range, which is kind of like the low end of the guitar. So if you reduce this level, it's going to actually kind of reduce basically what they would consider the mids. Okay, and then if I boost it, that would be the mids that kind of get boosted. And then same thing with the low end. See how the low end gets kind of wimpy as I pull the level down? And then if I want to boost the low end, you can crank this up. So if you're not used to or familiar with using a multiband compressor, think of these level knobs almost as like kind of like your bass, mid, and treble knob. And then again, you have to set where the crossover is. So for example, if I put this in like, let's say the 1K range, which is kind of like nasally, it's like right here, that is going to be covering that kind of like range. Oops, sorry, wrong knob. And if I pull that out, kind of gets rid of that nasally mid-range. Okay, So you want to treat the level knobs here in the multiband compressor, if you're doing this particular style of preset, as as the kind of the bass, middle, and treble, and then they correspond to the frequency that they're dialed in on. So let's reset this channel. So by default, it goes low, which doesn't have like a low end, but basically it's kind of like sub 100 hertz. And then these two frequency knobs you can adjust wherever. And the other thing that you want to think about is the ratio of how quickly it compresses. Again, in this style, I don't really mess too much with the ratio. Maybe I'll go up to 3 or 4. And then that's pretty much it, other than just like kind of tweaking the crossover. So for right there, I would say it needs a little bit higher. And you want some of that sparkle up there. Yeah, so a little higher. And what we're going to do is adjust the ratio just a little higher so that if I dig in, it doesn't like clip too much. Maybe even more. And then let's put the threshold a little lower. Because if you dig in too much, you get it'll kind of clip and it'll get that ugly digital distortion. Just a hair more. And let's get a little more low end. Okay, cool. And what you can do also is these compressor meters will tell you kind of what range it's covering. So you can like play chords all over the guitar. So you see that's pushing down the mids. And even the low E string is pushing down the mids. But so if you go a little lower than that, it's kind of messing with the low end a little bit. But now we get this kind of like real nice sparkle. Almost acoustic. Now, the other thing that they did to build this kind of sound is they generally ran all their effects in parallel. So I'll do some stock settings of stuff. One common thing that they did was a lot of chorusing. And actually, for example, if you use the Eventide H3000, they use basically what is called rich rhythm. That was like a very popular preset in that unit. So we're going to run this in parallel. Again, if you're not sure or if you're not familiar with running effects in parallel versus series, I have a video in my channel covering that. So feel free to watch that. And what you do is when you're running in parallel, you want to run 100% mix and you want to run 100% input gain. And the level is how much of the effect you add. So right now it's at unity. And here are some very stock settings. We're going to do -9 cents and 9 cents. And what that means is that there's a note that's going to be played into this pitch block, and then it's going to detune the first voice by 9 cents, which is just slightly out of tune, and then it's slightly out of tune flat, and then it's going to do 9 cents slightly out of tune sharp on the second voice. And we're going to pan those hard left and right. Oops. And -100. Okay, so now you get this kind of sound. So right away, you already got that instant, ooh, 80s kind of thing. And let's pull this down just a hair. And so the top end is clipping a little bit, so we're going to pull this threshold down. There you go. So it doesn't clip too much when you play up there. And again, you want to mess with the threshold so it doesn't, you still get the sparkle, and then the compressor definitely does change the tone a little bit, so you want to make sure that you have a little bit of that. right away, just doing that, you already get that very wide chorusing sound because you get a dry signal right up the middle, and then you get this slightly detuned thing. I don't actually use the chorus block in there. Not to say that the chorus block is incorrect, but just for this type of tone, this works really well. Then the next thing they did was also run generally a reverb in parallel as well. And again, the settings that you always want to do when you're running in parallel is 100% mix and 100% input gain, and the level knob is how much of the effect you want. And in this case, we'll do probably maybe Nimbostratus or one of the cloud style reverbs. So we'll try this one. It's pretty cool, but a little too much. Let's try this one. Cool. And what we're going to do is we'll bring the level down on that, and then we'll bring the time down on that parameter. And let's bring the stereo spread all the way up. Oops, that is too much. Let's do 100%. Let's do this unity. And maybe we'll do 10 seconds. And really great for that, again, that 80s thing. And then last but not least, we will add a delay. And a lot of times they use the multi-delay, so we can mess with that. Let's try just adding a regular digital delay for right now. But you can also use a multi-tap delay, which I will cover maybe in a future video or something. Let's do a digital stereo delay. And again, 100% mix, 100% input gain, or actually, let me think. Yeah, I guess we'll do this. Or no, let's do a ping pong delay. That's what I was thinking of. And then we'll do right here. Maybe we'll just go with the digital stereo. I wasn't really feeling that one. And let's adjust this to 66%. So really lush, really great. Again, you can probably mess with the the delays or whatever, just to add a little bit more ambience. But that is how you would use the multiband compressor to kind of get, like, I guess, a quote-unquote 80s style clean guitar sound. As you can hear, it's really great for that kind of thing. You can also swell into it. I need to clean the pots on my guitar. Or if you want to auto swell, then you would use a volume pedal or the volume block, and it has a swell feature in there. So if you go to type auto swell, and then so the threshold, and when you strike the threshold, it will swell. Excuse me. lots of fun. So maybe here. So all done just with the volume block. You got to mess with the attack and the threshold to see where the swell is. But lots of fun. So I will definitely, I kind of, glossed over some of these other blocks, which I will cover more in depth in the future. But that's a great way to use the multiband compressor for an 80s style clean sound. So if you have any questions or need any help or have any requests for future videos, by all means, leave a comment, like, subscribe. You can also contact me anytime, and I will do my best to get back to you. All right, thanks.